So I am Jessie, and I am the editorial director of Back Channel. You just heard from my great colleague, Stephen Levy. And this is Gina, and this is Sarah. And we're technically all on stage, but I'm not sitting next to you guys on the sofa. I am going to put myself right here so that we can have a conversation. Okay, and that conversation is about really how you build a brand in social media in 2017. And in 2017, social media is more crowded than it has ever been. The pursuit of likes is more vital than it has ever been. And I would argue that it is more challenging, therefore, to figure out how to build a new brand and build a new community than it has ever been. And Gina, with Mighty Networks, has been thinking a lot about this for somewhat of a long time, by web years. I mean, I think you're 2 web lives in.
Yeah.
New mic? We got an alternate in case.
2 mics.
Oh, and then we also got a chair.
2 mics and a chair. It's getting better and better. And Sarah is working on building a new brand. And we're going to hear a lot about that. I don't want to ruin the surprise. But let's start with this this idea of deep interests and deep networks. What does that mean on social media in 2017, Gina?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think we all are experiencing, and I think it's only accelerated in the last 4 months since the election, or certainly since the inauguration, which is that the feed is moving faster. It's actually it's harder and harder to actually pay attention long enough to care. And when you actually even think about, what are the companies or what are the brands that are truly breaking out in the way that, for example, Instagram broke out in 2010, you really can't name one. You can't name one. And so we actually spend a lot of time thinking about how do you actually build a brand today. And when we look at how you build a brand today, you actually have to start with your most passionate fans and followers and building connections between them in a way that we really think about it as a community-powered cult brand, and looking for how you build a concentrated source of love and a concentrated source of energy amongst your most passionate fans and followers is actually much more important than getting one video that has tens of millions of views. Because a video that has tens of millions of views is fine, but it's out of someone's feed within hours.
Right.
Or in some cases, within minutes.
So a corollary to that is it is easy enough to find 100 people who kind of like you.
Right.
But it's much more important to find the 5 people who love you and will stay with you.
That's exactly right.
And so how do you build a tool set to do that?
That's exactly right. And that's what we've done with Mighty Networks, which we talk about and think about as really an engine for community-powered cult brands. And the difference is that it's not good enough in 2017 to just set up a group or just set up a web forum, because you're actually competing with Instagram and you're competing with all of these really interesting and visual things that, and certainly the intelligence behind it in terms of who you're actually connecting people to and around their deepest interests. And it is through a deep interest and making those connections that you ultimately come out the other side with a cult brand that people are fired up to be a part of.
Right.
And that certainly, is true for Beyond Type 1 and what Sarah and her team has built there.
So nice transition here. Sarah, tell us a little bit about Beyond Type 1. Back up before we get to how you exist on the web. What are you?
So I don't think this is working.
Get rid of that.
Let's try this.
It's just eye candy for us.
So much better. So I'm one of the 4 co-founders of Beyond Type 1. We are a new nonprofit focused on type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune condition and impacts, in the US, about 3 million people in the US, but globally, there's, it's about closer to 30 million. So we have been working to use incredible design to really look at type 1 through a lifestyle lens and provide people in that community with what they need to live well, to thrive, and to survive. And so most of that does come down to the work we do as a content company. And then on the other side is how we then connect people to each other, and using the different platforms to create that sense of community, to bring them together, and to, especially with Mighty Networks around deep interest, which is, type 1's not an interest they've chosen, but it's an interest they have. And so then how can we connect them in a way that is meaningful and is beneficial to their life?
So some of our audience members may not have been on Mighty Networks before. They probably have not been a part of your community before. Let's decode exactly what that relationship looks like. So is Mighty Networks a name that you're going to know if you're a member of the Beyond Type 1 community?
No, not necessarily. We think about it as having different levels of branding, but first and foremost, even on our free platform, we are passionate believers that it's about the deep interest that people are coming together to actually connect around, and it's our job to be there, but in much more of an Intel Inside way than a, hey, you're coming to Mighty Networks to find your deep interest and a network somebody has created. That's not, actually, that discovery piece is not what we're doing. We're much more similar to call it like a MailChimp, and what MailChimp does for email lists, we want to do as a platform for social networks around deep interests, and really staying focused on how does a network where people are coming together because they're meeting people who have type 1 diabetes who are near them in New York City, or like them because they're caregivers of a child with type 1 diabetes, or that the topics that are most important to them, like troubleshooting together, or my favorite, Sarah, is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That we're making those connections in smarter, deeper, and more important ways for people.
So, a decade ago, there was a race on to figure out which social networks would sort of dominate the landscape and become the 2 or 3 social networks that would be our social graph.
I think we might know what the answer to that is.
Really? And so the question becomes, why don't you just start a group on Facebook?
Well, we certainly use Facebook as a platform to share information, and especially around issues of advocacy that we're interested in. But for us, truly, the Mighty Network, our network provides something different, which is it's as Gina says, it's a deep interest. You really are connected instantly with people, and there's someone always awake in the network, as we like to say. We're in 160 countries, so there's someone always awake. So you're popping your questions, or the thing that you want to troubleshoot about, or the thing that you need someone to cheer you on, or the thing you want to share, and there's someone there that shares your interest in a way that's all that's in your feed in the network. And so it's really an incredible tool as an organization. We don't really have to direct the conversation that's happening in the network.
Right.
We'll share some content in there once in a while, but it's different than our other platforms in that people are really connecting right away together, and then they are looking for that connection. As Gina said, there's a members near me feature, and they're looking to meet up in real life then. So you're providing them with this incredible digital community that since day 2, when we launched last year, has been powerful and impactful. But then they've also got this other opportunity to connect in real life.
And just to add to that, when you're building things on Facebook, and we hear this a lot, well, everybody's on Facebook. They're on Facebook doing a lot of other things. And when you are actually attempting to build a cult brand, something that people are actually building their own culture and building relationships between members, it's very difficult to get the level of passion, focus, lack of distractions that allow people to fully embrace and be a part and ultimately an advocate for your brand, and also for them experience their deep interest. And specifically, if you look at just a simple example like Pantsuit Nation. Pantsuit Nation, 4 million person Facebook group, and one of the most interesting things about Pantsuit Nation is that they automatically, this was for supporters of Hillary Clinton, they automatically just show you the posts of people you already know. So they actually don't show you the posts in a Facebook group of people who are near you, or people who are like you, or people who care about the same topics, because there are no topics in Facebook groups. There is no way to meet the other lawyers in Pantsuit Nation, because actually the way Facebook works is they sell audiences. And so if it's really easy to find the lawyers who are in Pantsuit Nation, then you're not going to buy ads for lawyers in Pantsuit Nation. And where this really became clear to me is I'm looking at this, and this is this amazing community of amazing people. And someone posts in there, they're like, hey, anybody from New Jersey in here? And it was 4 million people. And from my perspective, there is just simply a better way. And it's a way that it's outside the noise and distraction of Facebook. Right. It's not about building Facebook's brand. It's about building your own intensive cult brand. And ultimately having full access to your members, data and insights, and all the things that you ultimately can do to build a new cult brand.
So I want to back up and reframe that question a little bit, because building a brand in 2017 isn't a decision that you make in a binary way. Should I use Facebook or should I use X? Yeah. It's about figuring out what the most important tools are, and more importantly, how they work together. Mm-hmm. So Sarah, in your position as you're sitting there and you're beginning to think about this real life, this human community of human beings, and you're wanting to give them the tools to come together online, like what's the toolbox?
Yeah, that's a great
And what's the recipe?
Well, I think it's for us, it's first and foremost recognizing that people use different platforms in different ways, and we have different audiences we're serving across all of those. And so, I think for us, it's using each of the tools that we have across, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Mighty Networks. It's figuring out then who is in there, what do they want, and how can we best provide that for them and get the most out of that specific, right, platform. And I think when we first started Beyond Type 1, our job really was to help support people with Type 1, tell the true, authentic story in a beautiful way, and empower them to live well and live beyond their diagnosis. And then it became very clear very early on that people didn't want to be anywhere else. They wanted to be on our site. They wanted to get the information from us and not the Mayo Clinic or not any of the other medical sites, because we had, focused so much on design and brand. And then from there, we started to use the platforms in a different way. And I think you have to really figure out where your strongest opportunities are. And for us, it's a multitude of tools that we use, but it's right, understanding the power of each of them and then the way we can best use them.
So when you say multiple of tools, are you on Facebook? Yes. Are you on Twitter? Are you on Instagram? You are a nonprofit. I presume this means you have a limited attention span and budget for these tools.
We have one amazing social media manager. So we're a small team of 8. And part of the way that we've built this company, we've been around a little less than 2 years, but really, we have an office in the Bay Area, and hopefully that will be it for us. We'll be able to do our work from there because of the tools we have. So we have an amazing website. We are the largest Type 1. We are the largest diabetes platform in the world on Facebook. We are on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat. Keep going. We're on them all.
You must have you must have a Gen Z social media manager.
I do. Yeah. I do. So everybody on our team is 30 or under. So it's a pretty amazing group. But they're very savvy, and they understand the ways that we can use these tools and reach out to the different audiences. Mighty Network, though, is interesting. It's our platform where we don't see that divide in gender or in age or even in geography. It's the one where everyone, there'll be teenagers in there talking to adults, talking to caregivers, and we don't see that same divide that we see on other platforms, and it's because they've come together around this specific interest. Again, it's an unfortunate interest, but we don't see them segregating themselves into groups on Mighty Network.
And the way that we think about the role of, the new social network is that it plays the role of hub. So it should be your branded hub where your most passionate fans, followers, people who really want to make a connection to other people with that same deep interest can come and make those connections and
Right.
keep coming back because it's a branded app. It has your own, it has your own notifications, and mobile notifications, as you guys know, significantly more engaging than sending people emails. And what we see across our platform of 60,000 mighty networks is that you have this opportunity to really use the other social channels where you need to be and where people want to have that hit when they're looking at all of the other things that they're doing, when they want to go deep and when they want to make those connections that actually might end up in a meetup in person, or it might end up in a one-on-one conversation, or it might just be the place where it's like, you really don't want this a part of your, general social media. It's not really a question you want to ask, out in public or with any kind of filter across your general one-size-fits-all social identities. That's really the power of shifting from what is a website to your own social network where you get the data, where you get the insights, and where your members are building relationships that have implications and impact all over the place.
So, Gina, this is a problem you've been working on for a long time.
Yes.
So, talk to us a little bit about your process of discovery. What have you learned by doing?
Yeah, it's a really great question. 10 years ago when I launched Ning, so doing something very similar on the web, the most important thing we learned was the more options we gave people, the more fired up they were. So people would spend hours on a Ning network navigating around and doing they wanted more features, they wanted more tabs, they wanted more. Fast forward 10 years, if somebody does not open an app and are instantly connected to the members who are near them, the content that we basically need to read their mind to know that is important to them, the members who are most similar to them, the things that they actually care about, and all delivered in a beautiful branded package that is delivered super fast. And if they want to move from the web to iOS or iOS to Android or Android back to the web is all perfectly synced, they're like, nah. And so it actually, moving from this world, and I think this is true for not just deep interest networks, but
right.
really any product. What people were willing to do even 5 years ago in terms of surfing around or searching versus what they expect today and what is only going to be a higher and higher bar. Anyone who is thinking that this is something that they're just going to find a developer in Estonia to build something, and it's that moment where every entrepreneur is like, well, it's like what Reid Hoffman says, which is if you're not embarrassed of your MVP, you launched it too late. I actually believe that is not true today, because people's expectation of what it is that they want from you is 100 times higher than it was even 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah. And so I guess it begs the question, how does Mighty Networks make money?
We're a SaaS company. So, our customers are people that we are here on this earth to make happy, are people like Sarah. And if we create incredible experiences for Beyond Type 1 members because they're able to build real relationships with each other and then use that as the engine for a community-powered cult brand, then not only are we enabling, what we believe will be hundreds of thousands and then millions of new entrepreneurs and new cult brands that really don't need very many people to create something incredibly special for the people who have raised their hand and said, this is important to me.
Right.
And when we can do that, it creates just an incredibly new and interesting opportunity, in my opinion, for new brands, new experiences for people, new opportunities to build new kinds of social networks and new kinds of relationships and connections as a result. And I think it's going to be the next decade of innovation in social networks, but then again, I'm biased.
Slightly biased. So in our last few minutes, we have a lot of people in our audience who are trying to build their own new brands, who will be doing that in the next 18 months. What's your best advice, each of you, for people coming to a blank slate?
I think
For us, the most valuable thing has been to know our audience and listen to our audience. And so part of that has been really listening and watching across social media and responding and being nimble to what they want and need in a way that has really helped shape our company versus derailing it. But the listening to your community and your audience as opposed to coming in. We came in with an idea. My co-founders and I came in with an idea of what we thought the community needed. And then the more we listened, the more we were able to really understand why this community hadn't been served well, what they needed in order to feel connected and to thrive, and then truly, then to have, as Gina said, we've built this incredible following because we've listened.
Yeah.
So,
and I would just build on that with, I think whether it's the great Kevin Kelly essay of 1,000 true fans. Or thinking about how Airbnb really got its start by starting with things that don't scale. I think if you are building a new brand in 2017, you have to start with 100 incredibly passionate people who have relationships with each other, and then that 100 can become 1,000, and 1,000 can become 2,000, and 2,000 can become 5,000. And it gets confusing, especially in a venture-backed context, because if you're not actually thinking about what that looks like at 10 million or 100 million, it's like you're not thinking big enough, and all you want to do is create a lifestyle business. But really figuring out who those first 100 are, what and how can you build relationships between them, not just because you're a marketplace company, but because caregivers of children with type 1 diabetes really have a lot to talk about. And by doing that and making those connections under an aspirational lifestyle brand, you gotta tell my favorite thing about Beyond Type 1.
Oh, Gina, we were telling her this story last night. So the drop logo symbolizes a blood drop. So when you check your number, when you have diabetes, you have to prick your finger and get a blood drop and check your number. So we have this logo that I choose to wear this way, but we've had 114 people get this tattooed. Our 114th person was yesterday here in New York.
On their
body. And so Gina's like, that's amazing. You've connected people in such a way, and they feel so passionate about their brand. They're willing to get your logo tattooed on their body. So it's
if you're building a brand.
The takeaway here is that if
Good
you
logo.
are building a brand, you need to have such deep relationships that the people who love you will tattoo you on their body. Any specific place, like there.
We're open to whatever is
tattoos.
important
Anywhere.
to you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, ladies.